Hi everybody. This is the first video of a few for your next assignment on painting in Photoshop. We could do an entire course, full year course on painting in Photoshop. This is just one introductory assignment. So I'm going to jump right in. In this first video, I'm just going to show you a little bit about the brushes, and then we're going to set up what's called a custom brush. And then in the next video, we'll start the actual project. Okay. So on the side of all of our tools, right here is our brush tool. And you can see here, all you have to do is hit the letter B and you'll get your brush tool. You can choose the colors you want to paint with by clicking on the foreground color. There's a way once you get painting and you have colors you like, I'll show you another way to quickly choose a color and change it. But for now, just know the brush is here. And then here are the options that come up for a brush. There are some neat ones, but let's start with the super important ones. If I click where there's like a number and a little brush here, you can change the size of the brush. You can see how the brush looks a little bigger now. If I turn it all the way up, you can't even see it because it's going right off the screen. So you can change it from a big brush to a tiny brush and everywhere in between. You can also change, so here's a brush. It looks a little blurry, and that's because the hardness is turned down to 0. Watch what happens when I turn it up to 100%. It's has a sharper edge. Okay. There's also something called transparency, or the opacity. If I turn that down, you'll have more of a transparent brush, and you can change that here. You can also change the flow, and that's how much is coming out of the brush at a time. That, depending on the effect that you want. I'm going to, for now, turn everything back up to 100. Those are the main tools for now. We can also change the modes, a lot like you change the modes of the layers on the last assignment. Right now I'm going to leave everything normal and 100%, and I'm going to turn up the hardness. So you can see this is just a plain round brush. I can click on this, pick a new color, and paint some more. Let's pick another color, paint some more. And then if I want to go back to that blue, if I want this exact blue, I can use the eyedropper tool right here. And when I click on it, it changes the foreground color. But then you have to go back and hit the paintbrush tool again. And I don't really like that. So what I do is while I'm painting with my green, if I want to go to a color that's already on the screen, or I want to match an exact shade of a color, with my brush tool selected, I will hold down the Alt button, Alt, next to the space bar, and it temporarily turns into a eyedropper. I can click it and let go, it goes back to being a brush. So that's something I use a lot. All right, so there's the basics on some brushes. One of the neat things about Photoshop is I could make a splattery mark, maybe with a paintbrush on a piece of paper, and then scan it or take a picture of it, and I can use that splattery mark as its own brush. This is a plain round brush. But if I go to black, and maybe I turn the opacity down a little bit, and I just scribble a little, this is going to be a bad custom brush. I'm just going to make some marks. I might even let's see. Now I'll turn it up a little. Make some dots. This is going to be pretty hideous. But I just want to show you some random marks that I'm making. Now what I can do is I can go up to Edit and go down to Define Brush Preset. I click on that and I can give it a name. I'll call this Terrible Scribble. Okay, and now we have this as a paintbrush. I can make it smaller because it's humongous right now. And now that's the paintbrush I made. If I just click, it makes that. If I click and drag, now I have this strange brush. I'm not a big fan of that, but you can make your own brushes out of anything. This is just something scribbly I made. What we're going to do, this is what you're going to do for your assignment now. I'm going to close this and not save it. You're going to download this file here, 2-point perspective, off of Google Classroom. And when you open it up in Photoshop, you're not going to do anything. You're going to leave it like this. You're going to go up to Edit, go down to Define Brush Preset, and call this Perspective Grid. Now you have a perspective grid as a paintbrush. I'm going to close this file and open a new file. You are going to do this as well. And right here, there's all these different selections you can choose as your new file size, or you can type it in over here. But look for the one that says default Photoshop size 7 by 5 inches at 300 ppi. That's what we want. You can either double click on this or click on it once and then hit create. And this is what our project's going to be on. Now that I've made my perspective grid brush and I've made a new file, I'm going to go up to File, Save As, and I'm going to save this on my laptop, just like you will save on your laptop. Mine, it takes a minute to show up. And wherever I'm saving my files, I will name it in the way you should. Your first letter, the first letter of your first name, your first initial, and then your last name. And then this is, we can call this painting. And make sure that this drop down says Save as Type Photoshop and hit Save. This is the first step of your project. We're getting it set up for our painting project. Now the background, just picture it as a white blank piece of paper, but we're going to lay layers over it instead of messing with these pixels. So I'm going to go to my layer panel, and if your panels look a lot more chaotic, there's so many more of them, or you don't see layers, go back to the video I just posted tonight. It's in the resources topic of Google Classroom, and there's a short video on an introduction to getting started in Photoshop, and it'll show you how to go to Window and find Layers panel, and how any extra panels that are showing up that are in your way. If you want, you can right click on them and close them, or you can click on these little lines over here and close it there as well. So that we're just going to be mostly working with a layers panel. So anyway, once you get your layers panel, I'm going to leave this called background, and then I'm going to go down here to this icon and press it to make a new layer. Right now it's just called layer 1, and that's not helpful. We're going to name that in just a minute. Now if I'm clicked on the background, I'm going to be changing the pixels on this white background. I don't want to do that. I want to make sure I'm clicked on layer 1, and I'm going to go over here to my paintbrush, or I'm going to hit the letter B. I'm going to make sure this foreground color is black. Right now it's white. I could easily just click up here and it goes to the default foreground and background colors, or you can hit the letter D. Now the foreground is black. And now I have my paintbrush, and if it's not selected as your grid, what you do is you go up to here and you'll scroll down through all these selections until you see There's the scribble one I made. I want the perspective grid brush. I just click on that, and then I can hit enter. And I'm going to paint it somewhere on layer 1. But you see it's too small. It fits within it, and I want it to be bigger. So I am going to either increase my brush by using this, or here's a better way. The brackets on your keyboard, the bracket keys. If you find the letter P on your laptop and go to the right, the 2 keys to your right are the brackets. And look what happens if you hit them. I can hit the left bracket, and it makes my brush smaller. Every time I tap the right bracket, it makes my brushes bigger. So I'm going to make the brushes so big it goes off the page, and then I'm going to move my brush around somewhere. By the way, I'm going to make sure, yeah, that's right. I'm going to get it where I want. So if you ever took an art class and you had to draw your own perspective lines, this is an instant way to save you a lot of time. So maybe I'm going to put one of my vanishing points right here. Maybe I'll put it way up high. And I'm just going to click once real quick. I'm not going to hold down the button. Click, and it stamps it down. Now this brush is really confusing looking, so now I'm going to switch to this move tool at the top, so it's not as confusing. Now we have our perspective grid. It's on its own layer. I'm going to click on the name, double click on it, so I can change it, and I'm going to call it my grid. Now I can, if I hit this visibility icon, this eyeball, you can close the eye. You don't see it, click it, it's there. We can also make, for now, click on opacity and make the layer itself more transparent. But for now, we'll leave it like this. If you get all these things done, now you can put your perspective grid on here however fits good for you. I just picked this randomly for me. So it doesn't have to be right in this spot. This is all you have to do. You have a background layer, a grid layer. You'll do this with a black ink. It'll be 5 by 7, 300 pixels PPI, named with your initials, painting.psd. This is part 1. You'll get a part of your rubric grade is making this perspective grid brush. This is a trick I learned from a DreamWorks artist who taught online, and this was a way he could save time when he was setting up illustrations, and he didn't have to draw a grid. He just made a grid brush. All right, so I'm going to make sure this is File, Saved, and when this pops up, just hit OK. And I'm going to close it for now until the next video. So this is part 1. Great.